On Monday, April 1st, the Scottish Parliament put into play the Hate Crimes and Public Order Act 2021, which essentially criminalizes any conduct or speech that stirs up hatred against certain groups, including transgender people. Now, this made news because J.K. Rowling criticized the act for several reasons, including its chilling effect on free speech about gender issues and how they impact women. Now, I've read the act, every single word of it, and there are some serious problems looming. The most obvious problem is that it chills free speech. Now, the proponents of the law say that it includes free speech considerations within its very language. And that's true. Like I said, I read it. But the law is terribly written and terribly vague. People will be afraid to speak their minds on certain topics, including gender ideologies, because they won't know if their speech will actually violate the rule by stirring up hatred. Sure, one defense if someone's charged with a crime under the act is to say that their speech or their conduct was reasonable in light of the circumstances. But here's the problem with that standard in this case. The reasonableness of speech is a vague standard here. The law is barely out of its legal nursery, and there's already heated dispute about whether Rowling's tweets that criticize the law and that mention certain transgendered people, including activists and even some convicted criminals, stirred up hatred or were reasonable. Katie Neves, a biological man and transgender woman who was appointed to the UN Women UK delegation, has expressed feeling certain threats and abuses by J.K. Rowling's tweets and has received hateful messages as a result of them. According to Neves, Rowling violated the law. But Police Scotland said they reviewed Rowling's tweets and said that they do not violate the law and they would not charge her with a violation. Now, many are pointing out that either there's a double standard favoring someone as wealthy and well-known as Rowling, or the standard is so hopelessly bad that the law is a waste of time altogether. It's interesting that one of the proponents of this act is the First Minister of Scotland, Hamza Yussef. In response to critics, he said, "Unless your behavior is threatening or abusive and intends to stir up hatred, then you have nothing to worry about in terms of the new offenses being created." That hardly addresses anyone's concerns or clears anything up. But here's the more fundamental problem with the reasonableness standard in this particular context. In a world where it's considered perfectly reasonable to claim that you're actually and fully one gender, despite being biologically and genetically the other gender, causes one to wonder how we even judge reasonableness anymore. In other words, if reasonableness is a defense and reasonableness seems to have no standard other than that of fashion and feeling, how can anyone trust that someone else's reasonableness will get them out of a conviction? And because they can't trust what someone else might think is reasonable, they won't speak their minds out of fear. In light of all that's going on in our culture, our ability to know reality and our ability to know what's reasonable seems to have atrophied. After all, reasonableness implies reason. Reason implies logic. Logic implies objective standards and objective truth. 25 years ago, the very idea that biology is irrelevant to gender would have been largely considered unreasonable. People wouldn't have even known what you were talking about. But eventually, the idea that biology and gender are completely separate became a debatable issue, even respectable, and now it's considered hateful to disagree with that in any way. The autonomy of self-determination based primarily on preferences and feelings leads to this kind of chaos. Reason becomes a word we use a lot but have very little understanding of, and those who win the public debates are not those with truth and reason on their side, but those with power on their side. What we need is a resurgence of a belief in and a reliance on truth, facts, science, and good old common sense. One of the most famous things that Jesus said was that knowing the truth sets us free. Yeah, he was talking about the truth about himself, but he was also speaking about loving truth and finding out that truth and freedom are inextricably linked. Heeding that ancient wisdom would serve us well today.